This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githui. It's Thursday, June 27th. This is Africa 54. Twin suicide bombing attacks rock the Tunisian capital city. Nigerian Vice President Yemi Osinbajo talks to VOA's Peter Cloddy about his visit to Washington, Nigeria's economy, and other pressing issues. And Zimbabweans express their concern as the dollarization decade ends. We begin our broadcast tonight in Tunisia, where government officials say two suicide bombers blew themselves up Thursday in separate attacks on police in the capital, Tunis. One police officer was killed and one was wounded when the first suicide bomber targeted a police patrol on Charles de Gaulle Street in central Tunis, according to the Interior Ministry. 3 civilians were also wounded. Shortly after the first attack, a second suicide bomber detonated explosives near a police station in the Al Gorjani district, wounding 4 people. Heavily armed police cordoned off the locations of both attacks, one of which was only 200 meters from the French embassy. It's not immediately clear who is responsible for the attacks, which come just months before an election and at the peak of a tourist season. Tunisian President Beji Caid Essebsi is in a Tunis military hospital Thursday, where he was taken after suffering a severe health crisis, according to the office of the president. A presidential advisor says the 92-year-old leader's condition is, quote, very critical. President Essebsi was also hospitalized last week for what the presidency described as non-serious treatment. He has been a prominent figure in Tunisia since the overthrow of autocrat Zine El Abidine Ben Ali in 2011, which set the North African country on a path to democracy, avoiding the more violent upheaval seen in the rest of the region. Essebsi led the immediate transition as prime minister in 2011 and was elected president 3 years later. He announced in June that he would not run for a second term in presidential elections this year, despite strong support from his party. Now we cross over to Cairo, Egypt for the Africa Cup of Nations, where Africa 54 sports reporter Sunday Shomari is standing by. Good evening, Sunday. And let's go right to Burundi, Sunday, and Madagascar. Tell us about the match.
Yes, Esther, as you saw, the match has just ended not too long ago. And Madagascar right now is very happy being on the verge of making their debut, at the same time trying to go to the next round. This will be a great thing for Madagascar if it happens, Esther. On the same note, our brothers from Burundi, it's a goodbye because they lost this second game. I know it's going to be a tough loss for them, but what can they do, Esther, right?
I mean, there has to be a winner and a loser, right? So, Basande, next up is Senegal versus Algeria. What are analysts and coaches saying about this game, if it has not already started as we speak?
Esther, as you see me standing right here, this is in front of June 30 Stadium right behind me. This is one of the biggest stadiums out here. It's full of people, and the game is about to start in the next 25 minutes from now, Esther. Everyone is happy, excited, happy, and ready to wait for this wonderful tussle of two great giants of African soccer. Esther, when the teams arrived, Senegal was chanting with the name of the greatest player in Africa, Sadio Mane, who has been waited for so long since he missed the first game against Tanzania. But tonight, he will be there. But on the other hand, Algeria has one of the greatest players too, Mahrez, who was a thorn on Kenya's camp. And he's going to be here tonight to face Sadio Mane and Senegal. So people are very excited and ready waiting for this tassel, Esther.
Okay, beyond that, we have Tanzania and Kenya. The brothers, as you said, from another mother will be at it again tonight. Now, what should people expect? Remember, they both lost. They all promised to outdo each other. What should we expect from these neighbors?
Yes, Esther, this will be a tussle of the biggest in this African continent. The two East African countries, Esther, they're on the verge of their elimination. They both face elimination if they lose this game. So each one of them has to win. Do or die. It has to be a win for each team. Tanzania already said, the coach said they have earned their respect for Kenya. And Kenya also says, you know what? We will make it happen tonight and win. But who knows what's going to happen? Because the fans that I met today, Esther, were all chanting, saying, everyone, that we are going to win tonight.
Okay.
But we'll see after the 90 minutes, Esther. It's going to be a tough game.
Oh, definitely. There will be a winner and a loser, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. Sunday, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Africa 54 sports guru, Sunday Shomari, reporting live from Cairo. Now, the Nigerian Chamber of Commerce says the country is losing $19 billion a year, or 5% of its GDP, to gridlock, bribery and corruption at its port. The country's vice president says a solution is underway, but truck drivers waiting for weeks to unload their goods aren't so sure. Timothy Obiezu reports from Lagos.
Truck driver Abimbola Dimeji has been waiting for weeks at this temporary port in Lagos for his truck to be passed to the main port. Dimeji says he arrived here on the 7th of May.
This is where I've been staying. This is where I've been sleeping. I can't go home because I don't want anything to happen to the load I'm carrying, because I'll be held responsible for it.
Like Dimeji, these other truck drivers are also waiting their turn. Nigeria's Chamber of Commerce says the country is losing $19 billion a year, or about 5% of its total GDP as a result of bottlenecks. The situation is especially bad in Lagos.
You don't need to have people packing over 2,000 to 3,000 trucks between Igomu and Apapa and defecating on the road, bathing on the road, sleeping on the road, putting tremendous, unbelievable amount of weight and pressure on those bridges. Those bridges were built on stilts, on reclaimed ground. You know the terrain of that place is waterlogged. Whichever engine, and they are more than 40, 50 years old.
This is the busiest wharf in Nigeria, serving as an entry and exit point for many goods and businesses. But issues of delay here have escalated, slowing movement of goods. It takes an average of 3 weeks to clear products from the port, compared to the 48 hours in neighboring Benin and Ghana. Nigerian port authorities opened this mini port to serve as a temporary passage for truck drivers in order to decongest the main port. But the Truck Drivers Association is accusing port authorities of willful neglect of responsibilities.
In our ports,
inside the ports, they don't work. If you go inside, you'll see for yourself that they're not working. They're the ones responsible for this hold-up. They just opened this place. We don't know how it will be tomorrow, but we've been here for about 2 to 3 months now.
Besides delays, extortion, bribery, corruption, and fear of clashes between drivers are slowing activities at the port. Trucking firms have also increased prices to make up for time lost. Last weekend, Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo visited the port for a second time in 2 years, as the government is improving infrastructure in port areas and installing a call-up system for truck drivers. Until then, drivers like Dimeji are stuck waiting and hoping that things will turn around. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Lagos.
Nigerian Vice President Yemi Osinbajo was in Washington Wednesday for talks with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence. Nigerian officials say the man discussed security cooperation and support for civilians displaced by violence. VOA's Peter Clotty sat down with the Vice President to discuss his visit, Nigeria's economy, and expectations for President Muhammadu Buhari's new cabinet.
Mr. Vice President, what is your message to the people of Nigeria? And if I may ask, everybody kept asking me, When will Nigeria see their next cabinet from your government?
Well, I think the message to Nigerians is that they have a government that is completely focused on addressing the principal issues that concern them: the economy, security, and corruption, governance generally. We recognize that there are many, different voices and noises, but we won't be distracted by that. We're respecting the cabinet. As you know, that's the president's prerogative. I don't think people should be too worried. The most important thing is to have a cabinet that is representative of their views and that is capable of delivering the goods.
So, Mr. Vice President, how do you respond to critics who say your government, despite repeated promises, have yet to improve security in Nigeria?
We have the same concerns in northern Ghana, the same concerns in Mali, in Ivory Coast, where you find migratory herders who are coming to the south in search of water and pasture on account of desertification now and various problems. But the problem with these individuals who are migrating is that they are eating from the farms of the farmers. Many of them, and in many cases you find that they are armed, some of them armed because of cattle rustling, which they had experienced in various encounters with cattle rustlers, but also the availability of arms coming from, the abandoned armories in Libya and all of that. The availability of small arms, which is also has made it easier for people for many people to access arms. So you find that the farmer-herder clashes is one distinct form of security challenges that we have, and we've had that in the North Central, where in Benue and Benue, Taraba to a certain extent also. But that's a very peculiar type of situation, and essentially it's a resource conflict. Sometimes people want to create the narrative that it's a religious conflict. But anyone who understands this well and who is not trying to be mischievous will understand first and foremost that it's a resource challenge and that it has been so for several years.
Some people are saying the situation is difficult. How would your government help to jumpstart the economy, improve lives, combat corruption, social investment, as you rightly put it the other time? How would your government do this to improve the living conditions of Nigerians?
In our country, the bottom of the pyramid is the petty trader, the informal trader on the street. So working with the Bank of Industry, we targeted 2 million petty traders across the country whose inventories are usually not more than about 3,000 naira, 2,000 naira. And we decided that we'll give them, as I said, through the Bank of Industry, a sum of 10,000 naira to improve their inventories. And then when they pay back, they get 15,000, and they pay back 20,000, all the way up to 100,000. We found that that was an effective way of empowering our people, empowering the informal trader, who form the largest number of those who are working, but who at the same time are considered risky for any kind of credit facility. It was also an important way of bringing them into the financial net, so that in a more formalized system, where we're able to train them, where we're able to open bank accounts for them and all of that, and bring them more formally into the net, where they can become more useful to themselves and more useful to the economy.
That was VOA's Peter Clotty speaking with Nigerian Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Zimbabwe ends decade of dollarization with a new currency reform plan. We'll be back.
Isusu.
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I am Shaka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. The sight of motorcycle taxis, or motos driven by men, zooming through traffic in Rwanda's capital of Kigali is not unusual. But seeing women riders is rare. But that's now changing. A growing group of women riders are breaking the mold in an industry that has been the sole preserve of men. The women say the opportunity to handle the motos does not only provide them with employment, but also gives them an opportunity to become financially independent. 15 to 20 passengers a day can yield between $14 to $19. So far, 40 women have been trained by the new initiative Women Riders Rwanda, which hopes to have 200 women up to speed by the year 2020. Next up, the Esuk Emba market, located in the capital of Nigeria's Cross River State, was started in 1956 and still operates on a barter system where no money is exchanged for goods. Traders sell various produce, including vegetables, fruit, fish, and palm oil, among others. The haggling continues until customers have collected enough to feed their families. Swapping goods instead of cash is an age-old practice and has helped to combat increasing food scarcity in rural areas in parts of Africa. Besides market days, neighbors can also reach out to one another to swap food during the week. Residents say they usually collect money when visitors tour the region or when they sell their goods outside the community. They only use cash to pay a few bills like school fees. And finally, scientists at the London Zoo are hoping to revolutionize wildlife conservation with a new attraction, a plant named Pete, who takes selfies as he grows. Pete, a maidenhair fern with delicate leaves and shiny stalks, is on display at the zoo's Rainforest Life exhibit, surrounded by 4 fuel cells which are designed to store enough energy to trigger an attached camera to document Pete's growth. The development could have huge implications for working in low-light environments, such as beneath a rainforest canopy. And that's what's trending today.
10 Democratic presidential contenders who want to defeat U.S. President Donald Trump next year faced their first major test of the 2020 campaign cycle Wednesday night in a nationally televised debate. VOA's Jim Malone has this recap.
On stage in Miami, 10 Democrats vying for the right to challenge President Trump next year in a nationally televised debate hosted by NBC. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's been rising in the polls of late, focused on the economic divide in the United States.
I am in this fight because I believe that we can make our government, we can make our economy, we can make our country work, not just for those at the top. We can make it work for everyone, and I promise you this, I will fight for you as hard as I fight for my own family.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio crafted his appeal to working-class voters.
Because putting working people first, it matters. We need to be that party again.
But Ohio Representative Tim Ryan said national Democrats were out of touch.
We are not connecting to the working class people in the very states that I represent, in Ohio, in the industrial Midwest. We've lost all connection.
New Jersey Senator Cory Booker argued he was the best candidate to defeat President Trump next year.
This is a referendum on him and getting rid of him, but it's also a referendum on us, who we are and who we must be to each other.
Immigration was a flashpoint in the debate. Former Cabinet Secretary Julian Castro lashed out at Trump administration policies in the wake of the drowning deaths of a father and daughter from El Salvador and the haunting photos that have drawn international attention.
Watching that image of Oscar and his daughter Valeria is heartbreaking. It should also piss us all off.
Former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke joined in the condemnation.
We would not turn back Valeria and her father, Oscar. We would accept them into this country and follow our own asylum laws. We would not build walls. We would not put kids in cages.
The candidates were also asked about recent tensions with Iran. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar said she feared that President Trump was moving the country closer to war.
And this president is literally every single day 10 minutes away from going to war, one tweet away from going to war, and I don't think we should conduct foreign policy in our bathrobe at 5 in the morning.
There was also a debate over whether the U.S. should stay in Afghanistan. Ohio Representative Tim Ryan said yes.
And the lesson that I've learned over the years is that you have to stay engaged in these situations.
But Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard said it was time for the United States to leave.
As a soldier, I will tell you that answer is unacceptable. We have to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. We are in a place in Afghanistan where we have lost so many lives.
Also taking part in the Wednesday debate were former Maryland Representative John Delaney and Washington Governor Jay Inslee. On Thursday, 10 more Democratic contenders will get their first chance to debate. They include Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, California Senator Kamala Harris, and the current frontrunner, former Vice President Joe Biden. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
In our business news, world leaders are traveling to Osaka, Japan for Friday's opening of the G20 summit. The conference is aimed at promoting financial stability and sustainable growth. But as Henry Ridgell reports, many of its members have sharply differing views on issues like trade and climate change.
As the world's top 20 economies prepare to gather in Osaka, all eyes are on its two biggest members, the United States and China. US tariff hikes on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods has led to a spiraling trade war threatening the global economy. But in recent days, bilateral talks have resumed and the language has softened, raising hopes of a breakthrough, says analyst John Curtin, who is at the summit in Osaka.
Everyone's awaiting the bilateral meeting on the margins of the summit between President Trump and President Xi. But behind that drama, there will be many meaningful advances on a range of issues. And there are overlapping coalitions of countries that are pushing them forward in a spirit of compromise.
Summit host Shinzo Abe made his hopes clear this week.
I expect that the United States and China will resolve their trade friction in a constructive manner through dialogue.
The Osaka meeting could see significant progress, says Curtin.
This trade war is taking place at a time when the global economy is in pretty good shape. And there's major agreement about to arrive at Osaka on trade liberalization and new rules for the new high frontier of trade in the 21st century, digital trade.
Yet other shadows hang over the summit. The threat of conflict between the United States and Iran has driven up oil prices. In Hong Kong, pro-democracy protests have received vocal support from the West, though China insists it will not allow the demonstrations onto the G20 agenda. The biggest dispute could come over climate change.
And here there's a natural tendency for the host, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, to put that on the back burner, so the spirit of compromise, agreement, and harmony will prevail. But we have no time to lose to control of a climate crisis.
France says it will insist the summit communique backs strong action on climate change.
I have one red line. If we don't go far enough with our climate ambitions, that means we're holding the meeting for nothing.
Analysts say the G20 meeting will be seen as a test of multilateralism at a time of huge challenges for the international community. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
In southern Africa, on the streets of Harare, locals say they're worried about a decision to make Zimbabwe's interim currency its sole legal tender. Serena Chaudhry reports.
Zimbabwe may have taken another step towards relaunching its dollar, but on the streets of the capital, Harare, people are nervous.
I do not know whether this is sustainable, the new Zim dollar, or it will take us back to an era where there was inflation, there was no goods in the shops, and people, had no means of earning money. So for me, it's quite worrying. I'm in a mode where I'm worried. I don't know what the future holds, as it were, from this point onwards.
On Monday, the interim currency, the RTGS dollar, became the country's sole legal tender, ending a decade-long use of multiple currencies, including the US dollar and South African rand. President Emmerson Mnangagwa said the move was an important step in repairing the economy, but it's caused uncertainty among businesses and people who rely on remittances from the large Zimbabwean diaspora.
We believe that this is not a good idea. The timing is bad. The country is not ready for its local currency. This is going to backfire. In fact, it's going to take us back to the road we traveled in 2008, 2009.
Zimbabwe abandoned its own currency in 2009 after it was wrecked by hyperinflation, which reached 500 billion% in 2008, wiping out pensions and savings. Locals are still haunted by its memories. Mnangagwa, who replaced longtime leader Robert Mugabe after an army coup in 2017, is trying to attract investment and lift growth. But the pressure is immense. Inflation hit close to 100% last month, and with desperate levels of unemployment, Zimbabweans are impatient for progress.
That was Serena Chaudhry of Reuters reporting. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.